The editorial board of the Wall Street Journal, one wing of the Republican Party, and even some Democrats have been criticizing Biden for his hesitancy to adequately arm Ukraine. And this is too important an issue to be left to these types. Without sufficient arms, Ukraine will not be able to win. Some supporters on the left, some supporters of Ukraine, are intimidated by a number of arguments. One is the argument that amounts to conceding to nuclear blackmail. But we should realize, if Russia is able to win in Ukraine, or even just win a partial victory in Ukraine through its nuclear blackmail, that will simply lead to dictators and some non-dictators all around the world rushing to acquire nuclear arms themselves. South Korea would try to acquire nuclear arms because they would feel they could no longer rely on the United States. Countries like Iran and Saudi Arabia, their governments would do the same. And even in Latin America, perhaps Venezuela, and then other countries, their governments would try to acquire nuclear arms, and then it would just be a matter of time before one of those governments uses such nuclear arms. So the nuclear blackmail argument really, when you think it through, falls on its face. Now, it is unusual for socialists to call on the United States to arm another country. It might be unusual, but when you think about the history, it's not actually unique. Haiti, during the great Haitian slave revolution, the leader of that revolution, Toussaint Louverture, at one time aligned himself with the Spanish invaders in order to get arms and military training. Then he turned around and aligned himself with the French for the same purpose. Would socialists have opposed that? Or if you take the Italian invasion of Ethiopia back in the 1890s, the Italians were defeated by the forces led by King Menelik in 1895, I believe it was. Menelik had gotten arms from some of Italy's imperialist rivals in Europe. Would socialists have opposed that? And then you have, during the Spanish Civil War, when all socialists in the United States were calling on the United States to arm the Republican forces, the anti-fascist forces in Spain. Finally, during World War II, the U.S. provided massive arms to the Soviet Union in order to fight Hitler. As far as I know, there were no socialists that opposed that. So as I say, this is not a unique demand. Now, some supporters of Ukraine fear a break with the Putin apologists on the so-called left. Really, you could question whether they're really on the left or whether they're simply supporters of Russian and Chinese imperialism. But what's left to hold on to? These Putin apologists have crossed the bridge too far. They cannot return, and they will not return, to genuine socialist working-class internationalism. So a victory for Ukraine could lead to the development of a whole new socialist movement throughout the world. So that could be the basis for the development of a real working-class socialist movement. So I say we must not shrink from this argument, and we have to make that as a centerpiece in our defense of Ukraine.